Welcome to this CGTN special, The Power of Ideas, the Path to Peace. 80 years ago, humanity witnessed a defining triumph of justice, the hard-won victory in the World Anti-Fascist War. In that global struggle, China, as the main Eastern battlefield, played a decisive role in defeating Japanese fascism and supporting other fronts in Europe and Asia. These victories represented a collective stand for freedom, justice, and the courage to confront oppression. Today, as the world grapples with escalating geopolitical tensions, a deepening crisis of trust, and mounting threats to peace and development, we are compelled to ask, what lessons does history offer in our pursuit of lasting peace? And how can it guide us toward a more stable and just future? Please join me in welcoming our three distinguished speakers from today's discussion. They are Victor Gao, Chair Professor at Soochow University and Vice President of Center for China and Globalization. And Christian Wagner, PhD student at Peking University from Germany. And Melinda Liu, daughter of Honorary Doolittle reader Tung-Sheng Liu. Well, 80 years after the end of the Second World War, why does this history still demand our remembrance? What must we never forget? Our speaker, Victor Gao, Vice President of CCG, will reflect on this pivotal chapter of history and highlight China's role as the main Eastern battlefield in the fight against Japanese aggression. It is a story written in blood and sacrifice, but also one of resilience and the unshakable resolve of the Chinese people. Let's warmly welcome Mr. Gao.
For most of the people in the world, in the West in particular, they think about the war against Japanese fascism as a war of less than 4 years after the Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. But for the Chinese nation, the war of resistance against Japanese aggression was a war of 14 years, starting from 1931 all the way to the victory in August 1945. For 10 years, China stood by itself, fighting more or less alone against the onslaught of the Japanese aggressors. In 1931, the Japanese aggressors occupied China's northeast, and then they gradually expanded their aggression into many parts of China. At the height of the Japanese occupation of China, they occupied up to about half of the landmass of China, and they managed to close off almost all the coastline of China. Altogether, China sacrificed the greatest amount. More than 30 million of my countrymen lost their lives, either killed in battle or they became civilian casualties of the war. I think China really made the greatest contribution, not only in terms of the more than 30 million casualties that we suffered as a nation, not only for 14 years in a row, we never hesitated, and the Chinese nation as a whole wanted to be united, regardless of our party affiliations, regardless of our social status. All of us as a nation should be united together in this fight against Japanese aggressors. After the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the American joining this war of fighting against Japanese aggressors, China and the United States became allies. We really stood shoulder to shoulder. We joined in all the military actions together, and together with other allies, we defeated Japanese fascism. When we look back upon the Second World War, when we look around the world of today, one thing is for sure: war is not an option. and should never be an option for China and the United States. And I hope all of us will believe in the inevitability of peace. Peace is the most important thing for China and for the United States, and peace is the only thing that really matters for mankind.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. In 1970, a single act in Warsaw redefined the meaning of reconciliation. Then German Chancellor Willy Brandt's silent kneel before the Warsaw Ghetto Memorial. It was a gesture that transcended politics, an expression of a collective human conscience, and a solemn vow, never again. For our next speaker, Christian Wagner, a PhD student at Peking University from Germany, remembering history is not mere ritual. It is a vital shield against the resurgence of fascism. Join me in welcoming Christian Wagner.
The belief that one ideology or one civilization is better than all the rest, that's exactly where fascism begins. From the vintage point of 21st century, we know from our heart that this fascism must not be repeated. To do that, we must learn from history and respect different civilizations. So what does it mean to truly understand a country? Take China's example. Not with prejudice, but with reason. The most absurd thing you hear about China, well, that's not real socialism. That's based on prejudice and feeling, because we think our perception is the only correct one. So let me give you two examples. First, China has taken a completely unique path of its development, something unprecedented in the whole human history, and difficult to comprehend when drawing comparison with other countries. Whether it is from then until today, the Mao Zedong thought, the Deng Xiaoping theory, or Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. China's system has constantly evolved. What makes its path particularly remarkable is the two integrations. To integrate the basic tenets of Marxism with Chinese specific realities and with its traditional culture. Every domestic and international development requires an adjustment to the entire system, and China has just done this with socialism constantly evolving. Second, under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, nearly 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty. How is such a huge project possible? In theory, CPC guidelines specify that local governments, enterprises, people from all walks of life should work together to achieve this goal under the leadership of the party. But in practice, I had the opportunity to witness these efforts, firsthand during a rural field visit in China. There I saw what poverty alleviation truly means. Farmers got new jobs, social security, housing, and local infrastructure. Socialism in China is a unique evolving system that adapts to meet the needs of its people, and recognizing this, respecting this, and even supporting this helps us to see beyond stereotypes and understands China's real progress.
Thank you, Mr. Christian Wagner. As we reflect on the history of World War II, the painful lessons written in blood and tears remind us of the need to safeguard the hard-won peace we enjoy today. Yet even amid the unspeakable horrors of that war, there were moments when the light of humanity pierced through the darkest of times. Across countries and cultures, countless individuals risked their lives to save others. Acts of courage that stood in defiance of hatred and violence. Our next speaker, Melinda Liu, brings us one such story, a powerful reminder that even in war's darkest hour, the light of human compassion endured. Let's welcome Ms. Liu.
Astonishing examples of sacrifice and survival involving Chinese and Westerners took place during the war, even before Pearl Harbor. The legendary Flying Tigers, whose name I think is familiar to most of you, began their daring exploits in the skies above China. They were mostly Americans, led by Claire Chennault, who fought under the Chinese military. The Flying Tigers shot down an extraordinary number of enemy aircraft, given their small numbers, and helped keep open the vital transport links through which supplies from British-held airports in India were brought to Western China, helping cities like Chongqing, Kunming, Chengdu, helping them stay alive. Last year, many audiences were moved to tears by watching a documentary titled The Sinking of the Lisbon Maru. In October 1942, Chinese fishermen in 46 small boats rescued 384 British prisoners of war aboard a sinking cargo ship which had been requisitioned by the Japanese to transport them. Recently, a memorial to these rescues was unveiled in Zhejiang province. So it was by sheer chance that some of the stories of these rescues that took place during World War II included my father's name. The most important World War II lesson is that even under the shadow of death, the shared spirit of humanity manifest in acts of courage and mutual aid bound Americans and Chinese together. It's a powerful force that transcends borders and endures through history, a force that we need more than ever today.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Thank you to our three distinguished guests for their insightful contributions. Now, let's take a short break. We'll return to our panel discussion in a minute. Welcome back. Now you're watching CGTN special, The Power of Ideas, The Path to Peace. I start with Victor, 80 years later. What's the importance? Why should we remember World War II? And in particular, of course, for people in this part of the world, the Chinese role in defeating the Japanese aggression or in defeating, basically winning the Second World War.
Well, I think ever since 1945, the greatest challenge for mankind is to prevent another world war from happening. I think more or less mankind has succeeded in achieving that goal. However, over the decades, over the years, we still witness lots of wars, regional wars, small wars, internal civil wars of all kinds, plaguing mankind. Therefore, I think it is time for mankind to really wake up to the new challenges. We not only want to prevent a global war, a global scourge for mankind as a whole, we should also have the wisdom and the courage and the vision to mobilize all resources to prevent wars of all kinds. Now, this is easier said than done. But if we look around the world, in different parts of the world, we still see lots of such wars and conflicts taking toll of thousands, if not tens of thousands, or even millions of human lives. I think we need to focus on really what matters. That is, to treat everyone, every part of the world, every country in the world as equal. No one should be allowed to dominate above all the others. And no country should be allowed to indulge in the fantasy that they have the truth, the total truth, or nothing but the truth. Truth, relatively speaking, is relative. Your version of the truth may be different than my version of the truth, and the difference should be our strength, rather than should tear us into pieces.
Thank you, Victor. To Melinda, you talked a very touching story there about your father and his comrades rescuing the American pilots at that time. I wonder, what's your first reaction when you heard of the story from your father?
Actually, it's a good question because it's one of the paradoxes of my involvement with the story and my father's involvement with the story. I was actually a very, very young child when I became aware of these facts of my father's experience. And probably because I was so young, I had no idea how unusual it was. He talked about it occasionally, but not very much. And here's the thing about the wartime generation. So many of them went through these astonishing stories of survival, bravery, courage, tragedy. But most of them will say, I'm not a real hero. I was just doing what I was supposed to do, or I was helping my comrades. The people who were heroes, they didn't really want to be called heroes. They were very modest, generally. And I think it's not just World War II. It probably happened in many conflicts. I think World War I was the same. And for the younger generations, we didn't think these heroes had anything to do with our lives, even when they were our parents or our grandparents. Somehow it was just something that those old folks did. But now, as I myself as one of those old folks, I realize younger generations really do need to take on board these experiences that the older generations experience.
But you want?
Yeah. Melinda, let me tell you, your late father was a hero to me and to all of us.
Thank you.
And you, by promoting peace and friendship between China and the United States, you are also a hero.
Oh, now
So
it's
I
my
think,
turn to say I'm not a hero.
I think it is really a responsibility for all of us to learn from Melinda, learn from his late father, learn from all the Doolittle readers to promote peace, especially peace between China and the United States.
Speak of that, Melinda, I know you touched upon that a little bit. But how can we keep this spirit alive, the friendship between, say, the Chinese young people, American young people in particular?
To me, it's pretty simple. Maybe I'm overly simplistic, but I think both in our own countries and also internationally, I think it's really important to focus on what unites us, the fact that we're all human beings, instead of all the things that divide us. Because there are many differences. Languages are different, cultures are different, history is different, geography is different. But if we can focus on the shared humanity that we all have, I think that would be my recipe for the future. Thank you.
Let's move on to Mr. Wagner. Those who can't remember history are condemned to repeat it. And that's importance of remembering history. But to today's youth, the younger generation, how can we inspire them to learn history, to learn the lessons of history?
I think there are several points to point out here. First of all, we always think we need to learn from the theories, from the history, we read the old books, and then we understand it or we feel connected. But in practice, it's not that easy, because we know all when we go to universities, to the schools, and then we learn in the class and maybe fall asleep or something like this. But what touch us are our emotions, especially when we are young. We are so full of emotions. Everything makes us so sensitive. When we hear the histories, when we watch the movies, when we hear the stories like today, your story, your personal family story, like also my grandparents, when I remember their stories, like from the personal people we know, we're emotionally attached to them. Also our country and the people around us in our neighborhood, mostly the biggest heroes are just a room next to us. So making the people-to-people communication also with people from other countries. Like, for example, when I was studying myself at the Renmin University for my master degree, I was always with the African community in touch. And their stories inspired me and influenced me dramatically. So and this kind of influences from other people also builds our future in a way, because it gives us our position to build our own future. Maybe that's the reason why I'm today even here, because this kind of people inspire me and their stories inspire me. Also your story is inspiring me. Yeah. So I think to find the reason where we can use our own emotions for the communities and learn from the history to build our own future as well.
What do you think we need to do to prevent any future conflicts or war in a global scale? I will start with Mr. Wagner.
I think something which inspires me about the future of the world, learned from China actually, is the poverty elimination of 800 million people, which is actually something we can learn worldwide. All the wars, what are the reasons of wars? Mostly it's something economic reason, maybe ideological or religious in certain extent, but mostly economic interest. So, but do we really need these days always high luxury or something like this? Because we see that poverty in the world, or like the problems of economic problems of ordinary people can be solved already. We can make, for example, in the whole Africa already the poverty alleviation with similar strategies like in China. And this is all over the world like this. We have the most advanced technologies in human history nowadays. Also AI and all kind of different things in the agricultural industry, for example. If we can use it, work together, make the technology exchanges, more cooperation, and focus on really, if there are some issues, we can solve them based on win-win, based on try to build something together. For example, if we see this conflicts in the Middle East, instead of fighting each other, maybe there could be already problems solved together by building together, by creating a shared future together. But this kind of thinking about we can share or we can build together is always kind of falling out of the table, and this is quite sad. And instead, more the emotions are winning and the personal interest, the egoistic interest, but not the common interest of the people. And I think if you just focus what the people need, what not I need, what the people need, the collective, the region itself, then we find always the answer for peace. Because what everyone wants, then it's not war. And I think the most important thing is just stop fighting and always focus the diplomacy. I'm like disappointed to see in which extent in the modern world these days, weapons speak more than words, and I think diplomacy is the highest good which we created since the Second World War with the United Nations Charter and all the agreements back then. And these agreements should create peace for the whole future of humanity and humankind. So I think if we just follow this United Nations charters, the international law, and not ignoring it, then we can maybe find more peaceful approaches.
May I use this opportunity to make a personal recommendation? And I was very touched by Melinda's real story about her late father, about her family, about the Doolittle raiders, etc. And I understand the Doolittle raiders network in the United States. Now all the Doolittle raiders already passed away, but their descendants are still keeping the tradition alive. My recommendation is very simple. I think, the Chinese president mentioned that thousands of the Chinese people perished, were killed by the Japanese aggressors because they were involved in saving the Doolittle raiders, or they were suspected by helping the Doolittle raiders, and many Chinese people were also involved, just like Melinda, like your late father did. I want to see whether we can really do some work to make sure that the descendants of the Chinese people who really helped the Doolittle raiders, just like your late father, for example, who was one of the very outstanding person involved, as well as those Chinese people killed by the Japanese aggressors in association with the Doolittle raiders, can be kind of identified, and we can also create a kind of body to honor their parents or their grandparents did. Because I truly believe between China and the United States, like Melinda said, like the Chinese President Xi Jinping said, people-to-people exchanges are the most important thing. In my case, I spent 4 years at Yale University. I benefited hugely from that part of my life. And I don't think the Chinese people and the American people are destined to be enemies. We can be friends, we can be partners. And the Doolittle story, and I want to add one thing. I think Doolittle and the Doolittle raiders did do much to end the Japanese fascism. So this legacy should be promoted for as long as possible. More and more people in China and in the United States should have the benefit of this story. And while on the American side, they've done excellent job in getting the Doolittle raiders, the descendants organized in China, it's time for us to get our acts together. We also do our honor of anyone in China back in 1942 who helped the Doolittle raiders, many of whom sacrificed their lives. So if any one of you agree with me, we can do something together.
Let's hope that it will come true soon.
Thank
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
all of you. Now it's time for our question and answer session. We are joined today, as you can see, by a group of bright college students. Let's hear what's on the minds of the younger generation. If you have a question, for any of our guests, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. Go ahead, please.
I have a question for Professor Gao. Nowadays, we know our President Xi is calling for every country to work together for the fate of mankind. So do you think we still have chance to achieve that, or we can achieve that goal under the international order created in 1945, instead of create a new world order?
First of all, let's think about what is the international or world order established in 1945. Now, the order established in 1945 after defeating Nazi Germany in Europe and Japanese fascism here in Asia is a multipolar world, is a world which will never allow the occurrence of another world war. This is very important. Now, many people blame the United Nations for being very ineffective, which I agree. But the United Nations has achieved one goal. That is, there has never been another world war since 1945. In that sense, we should be grateful to the international world order established in 1945. Now, President Xi Jinping has talked about the shared interest, the common destiny for mankind. But my personal interpretation is that that is still within the existing world order. I don't think China wants to build a new world order. I think it is up to all of you, the younger generation, to stand up and to see, yes, there is always a better way. There is a highway. There is a low way. And we want to go the highway. The highway is always promoting peace, defending free trade, and make sure that the world we live in is a multipolar world. It will never be allowed to become a unipolar world dominated by one single country.
With that, we wrap up this CGTN special, The Power of Ideas, The Path to Peace. Thanks again to our distinguished guests, Victor Gao, Melinda Liu, and Christian Wagner. I'm your host, Xu Qinduo. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye for now. Okay. Let's do it again.